the stranger who lives in my apartment. I came home late that night, exhausted from work. The lights were dim, the air heavy, but nothing seemed unusual. Until I reached my bedroom door and noticed it was slightly ajar. I always lock that door. My stomach twisted. I live alone. Nobody should be there. I stepped closer, slowly, ears straining. The room appeared dark, empty. But then I noticed the chair moved slightly from its usual spot, turned toward the corner, as if someone had just been sitting. I froze. My mind raced, telling me it was impossible. I triple-checked the door. Locked. I had always locked it. The apartment was quiet, but somehow the silence felt deliberate, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to notice. I didn't touch the chair. My hands shook. I scanned the room with shallow breaths. Nothing moved. Nothing changed. And yet, I knew someone had been here. They had entered, observed, maybe lingered long enough to memorize the space. The next night, I woke to faint creaking. My apartment had the usual noises pipes, floorboards, but these were deliberate, almost pacing. Soft footfalls echoing in the dark, careful and measured, circling my living room, my kitchen, then stopping abruptly. I told myself I was imagining it. Stress, fatigue, overwork. But each night, the sounds repeated. Footsteps pacing, the soft drag of some heavy object across the floor, the faintest whisper of a voice I couldn't place. One morning, I noticed something odd. My shoes, usually aligned neatly by the door, were slightly askew. My laptop, left closed on the table, had been moved. A coffee mug sat half full in a place I would never leave it. I confronted myself, trying to rationalize. Perhaps I had been sleepwalking. Perhaps I'd misplaced things in my exhaustion. But then the notes started appearing. Small scraps of paper, written in jagged handwriting. My name repeated, sometimes underlined, sometimes circled. I burned the first note, convinced it was a prank. But the next appeared the following morning. This time, placed inside my closet, folded neatly, as if someone had studied my habits, learned how I would react, and left it where I would definitely find it. The apartment felt different. Not haunted, not cursed, but aware. Each creak of the floor, every flicker of light, every shifting shadow became amplified. I couldn't relax. I couldn't sit. I couldn't sleep without imagining a presence just beyond my vision. I tried cameras, motion sensors, security systems. The front door always showed nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. Nothing. Yet the subtle disturbances persisted. The intruder moved silently, carefully, as if they had keys or never needed them at all. One night, I woke to a soft creak near my bedroom. I strained to hear, heart racing. A shadow flitted across the wall, too slow to be a reflection, too deliberate to be a trick of the light. I held my breath, frozen in place. The next morning, I found the chair slightly moved again. Not far, just enough to be noticeable. I hadn't touched it. Nobody else could have. The apartment was locked, as always. And yet, evidence of a presence lingered, subtle but undeniable. I began leaving doors open deliberately, testing the theory that someone was inside. By morning, doors I'd left closed would be ajar. Drawers I left open would be closed. Subtle signs, but enough to terrify me. Then came the notes with messages that weren't just my name. Short phrases like warnings. I know. I watch. Don't move. The handwriting was inconsistent, sometimes sharp, sometimes slanted. Each one seemed designed to make me pause, to instill dread. I tried telling friends. They laughed nervously, offering excuses. Drafty apartment, old building, nerves. But I knew better. I could feel it. The presence. Watching. Waiting. The apartment was no longer mine. It had been quietly invaded, and I was the intruder in my own home. One night, I heard breathing, slow, measured, deep, almost deliberate, behind my bedroom door. I didn't move. I barely dared to breathe. Every nerve screamed that if I acted, the intruder would notice. Every muscle ached with fear and anticipation. The next day, I discovered something worse. My personal items were subtly moved. A book tilted slightly, the coffee mug closer to the edge of the table, a jacket hung unevenly. Minor details, but unmistakable. Someone was learning my habits, studying me. I attempted to leave the apartment. Each time I returned, subtle signs of intrusion had occurred. The chair moved. The notes appeared. Items shifted. The apartment had been violated while I was away, but nothing obvious. Silent, careful, malicious. I considered calling the landlord, but what would I say? Someone is inside, moving quietly, leaving no evidence. They would think me insane. Perhaps I already was, but the presence, the intruder, the awareness of eyes just beyond my sight was real. One night, I woke to a noise beside my bed. My eyes flicked open. There he stood, not moving, not speaking, just a shadowy figure at the foot of my mattress. Pale, unnerving, smiling just slightly, not threatening, not leaving, just watching. I froze. Every instinct screamed to run. Yet I couldn't. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flee, but my voice and body betrayed me. He didn't move. He didn't breathe audibly. He just observed, and the apartment felt alive with his attention. I blinked. When I opened my eyes again, he was gone. No trace, no sound, no smell. Just the lingering unease that I was never alone, that he could appear at any moment, anywhere, watching, smiling, waiting, days blurred together. I left doors open, windows unlocked. I tried to catch him. Nothing. Cameras revealed nothing. Yet at night, footsteps paced the apartment. Drawers opened. Lights flickered. Subtle, deliberate signs of someone studying my life, anticipating every move. I began sleeping in the living room, lights on, chair positioned between myself and the bedroom. Every creak, every shadow, every draft heightened my paranoia. The apartment had become a trap, a place where I could never truly rest. I considered moving, selling, leaving, but every time I tried, subtle signs appeared that made me hesitate. Notes on my door. Items slightly shifted, footsteps pacing. The sense that the apartment itself was aware of me, aware of every decision I made. I don't know how long this will continue. Weeks, months, maybe years. The intruder never shows fully. Only in glimpses, in signs, and the overwhelming feeling of being watched. I can't leave. I can't stay. And yet, I endure. Sometimes I see him in reflections, in mirrors, in windows, in darkened glass. Just a shadow, a slight smile, a tilt of the head, watching, knowing, waiting. My apartment is no longer mine. It belongs to him as much as to me. If you think your home is safe, think again. Someone can enter silently, live in shadows, observe and study. And if they choose to, they can make you feel their presence without ever being caught. Always one step ahead. The apartment doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. And neither does he. Always watching. Always waiting. Always present, even when invisible. I can feel him now, somewhere behind me, smiling. I can't escape. And the worst part? I know eventually I won't need to see him at all to feel him. He will be there, always, smiling, waiting, watching. I live in his apartment now, not the other way around. Others didn't notice until it was too late. Open the horror box if you want more. The elevator always stops on the 13th floor. Halfway dark, home of the horror box. I work late nights in a skyscraper downtown. The elevator is the only way up. Everyone jokes about the 13th floor. There isn't supposed to be one, just a skipped number. But the elevator doesn't agree. The first time it happened, I pressed 14 after a long shift. The elevator stopped. The doors opened, revealing a dim hallway labeled 13. My heart thudded. I never noticed it before, and no one else seemed to exist. I stepped out cautiously. The lights flickered. Carpeting looked old, faded, stained. The walls were yellowed, peeling at the corners. No furniture, no signs, just the endless hum of fluorescent lights overhead. It smelled like something rotting under the floor. I pressed the elevator button to leave. Nothing. The panel didn't respond. I pressed it again. The doors remained open. Footsteps echoed behind me. Slow, careful, deliberate. I spun around. Nobody there. Only the dim corridor stretching endlessly. I ran back to the elevator. The doors shut before I reached them, trapping me inside. The panel lit up. 13 blinked at me, glowing ominously. It shouldn't exist. The number isn't real. And yet, here it was. The next morning, I told no one. I convinced myself it was exhaustion, fatigue, or imagination. But the memory stayed vivid. The dim hallway, the smell, the footsteps. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me back. That night, after work, I avoided the elevator. Stairs instead. But curiosity gnawed at me. I pressed the button anyway. Doors opened. The panel lit up again. 13. My pulse raced. Every fiber of my body screamed to leave. I stepped inside. The elevator moved slowly. Lights flickered, and then the doors opened again. 13. Nothing had changed. The hallway stretched endlessly. A faint scratching noise came from the far end. I froze, every nerve alert. I saw it then. A figure. Tall, hunched, obscured in shadows. Watching. Waiting. I couldn't tell if it had a face, only that it was smiling. The kind of smile that knows things you don't want it to know. I stumbled back into the elevator, pressing buttons frantically. Nothing responded. Panic surged as the doors creaked open again. I didn't move fast enough. The figure emerged, slow, deliberate, walking closer. Every step echoed like a drumbeat of dread. I pressed every button at once. Floor numbers blinked, but the elevator didn't respond. 13 glowed. I realized with sinking horror that it had been waiting. For me, always. Every time I worked late, it waited. The next night, I tried to avoid 13 entirely. I didn't press the elevator. I went home early. But at 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, "See you on 13." I checked security footage the next day. Nothing unusual. Cameras don't show the 13th floor. Hallways are normal. The figure doesn't exist on tape. And yet, I remember it. I felt it. I smelled it. I knew it followed me. I stopped taking the elevator. I started leaving earlier. But no matter what I did, it found me. I heard footsteps at night, just outside my apartment. Slow, deliberate, smiling, waiting. It's patient. It always waits. Sometimes I hear whispers, names of employees long gone, floors that don't exist, and the smell of rotting carpet. The elevator hums even when off. I swear I hear it, waiting, always waiting, for the next person who ignores the number 13. I've told no one. Who would believe me? Management says it's a glitch. Employees joke about missing floors, but I know. The 13th floor exists, and it's hungry. It knows who steps inside. It watches. It waits, always. The next time you enter an elevator late at night, check the panel. If 13 appears, don't step inside. Don't even think about it, because once you do, it knows, and it never forgets. Sometimes I think it follows me home, watching from the street, Waiting in the shadows, the doors open in my dreams. The carpet smells of rot. The lights flicker. I wake sweating. And the number 13 is still blinking in my mind. If you ever work late and the elevator stops where it shouldn't, don't step out. Don't answer the whispers. Don't look. The 13th floor doesn't exist until it chooses to show itself. Some people ignored the number until it was too late. Open the horror box if you want more. The apartment that watched me back. Halfway dark, home of the horror box. I moved into a new apartment last month. The lease was cheap, the location convenient, and everything seemed normal. But the first night, I noticed something strange. My reflection in the living room window didn't move in sync. I froze, staring. The reflection tilted its head slightly while I didn't. My pulse raced. I spun around. The room was empty, only the furniture I'd brought. The window showed nothing unusual, just the city lights. Over the next few nights, subtle things changed. Doors I'd left open were closed. Objects I knew I placed carefully were shifted slightly. A mug tilted, a book open to a page I hadn't read. The apartment was alive. I installed a camera. One small, inconspicuous device in the corner of the living room. I told myself it was paranoia. Maybe a trick of shadows. But when I checked the footage the next morning, the frame skipped. Something had appeared in the corner. A figure, shadowed, hunched, unmoving. Only visible for a fraction of a second, but unmistakable. I rewound, slowed, zoomed in. Nothing else in the frame moved. No doors, no lights, no furniture. Just the figure, staring, watching. I asked the landlord about previous tenants. All normal. No complaints, no missing persons, nothing. I asked neighbors. They claimed to hear creaks occasionally, nothing more. But the apartment didn't feel normal. It felt like it had its own consciousness. One night, the figure appeared again. I was cooking. The sound of chopping vegetables echoed too loudly. Behind me, the reflection in the glass of the microwave showed it, crouched low, smiling faintly. Not in the kitchen, only in the reflection. I started keeping a journal. Every incident, every anomaly, every feeling of being watched. The notes on pages grew frantic, observations layered on observations. Yet each time I tried to cross-reference with reality, something contradicted me. Objects had moved, footsteps echoed, shadows lingered. Then came the first note. Folded, thin paper slipped under the door. In neat, jagged handwriting. I know you see me. My stomach dropped. I hadn't left anything outside the door. Nobody else had keys. And yet the note existed. I confronted the apartment itself. Ridiculous, yes. But I spoke aloud. Who's there? The silence answered me. I laughed nervously. Then the lights flickered. Slowly at first, then violently, throwing the room into shifting shadows. Over the next few nights, the activity escalated. Subtle touches. My chair moved while I showered. My laptop screen opened slightly, refrigerator door ajar. Small, almost polite disturbances, as though the presence enjoyed being noticed without direct confrontation. The reflection always followed me now, even in mirrors, phone screens, polished surfaces. Sometimes I'd catch the corners of my eyes moving, and there it would be. Always mimicking, always watching, always closer than I expected. I began leaving objects as bait. A mug tipped on the counter, a jacket draped over the chair. I checked cameras obsessively. Each morning, the items were slightly altered. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to prove someone or something was interacting with my space. The next note was longer, folded in half, written in the same jagged script. Don't try to run. I'm inside everything. I know where you look. I know what you see. My hands shook as I read it. Every nerve screamed. One night, the reflection spoke. Not in words, just subtle lip movement. I swore I heard my own voice repeat what it did. "I see you?" My body froze. I couldn't tell if it was a hallucination, exhaustion, or something far worse. I installed more cameras, motion sensors. Nothing appeared on tape in real time, but reviewing footage later, I saw things shift. Shadows bending unnaturally, furniture tilting, faint shapes moving just outside the field of view. I tried leaving the apartment. One night, I packed a bag, stepped out, but when I returned in daylight, the note awaited on my kitchen counter. "Welcome back. You forgot something." My bag had been moved slightly, the lock still untouched. The activity intensified. Whispered words at night. Footsteps pacing behind walls. The reflection no longer mimicked perfectly. It smiled faintly when I didn't. Every surface, polished or reflective, became a portal for observation. I finally entered the reflection. Stared long enough to see it clearly. Tall, thin, hunched slightly, smiling faintly. Its eyes, my eyes, perfectly mirrored. It wasn't just mimicking anymore. It had learned me. It had become me. The apartment now feels alive. I hear faint breathing when alone. Small taps, clicks, furniture shifting. Objects placed deliberately. Notes, sometimes folded, sometimes in plain view, reminding me that I'm observed, studied, cataloged. Always cataloged. I tried friends, showed the cameras, the notes. Nobody could see the reflection. Nobody could hear the whispers. It only existed for me. They suggested stress, exhaustion, paranoia. I laughed nervously, but I know the truth. The horror box sits in my imagination now. Every strange occurrence, every reflection, every note feeds the narrative. Sometimes I imagine slipping the notes into it, hoping it will contain this presence. But it always returns. Always. I leave objects deliberately. Sometimes I move a chair, tilt a mug, leave a note for it. A conversation with the apartment itself. Each response is subtle, clever, always polite, almost friendly, but terrifying. It enjoys this. It studies me. Last night, I awoke to a new note on my desk. "Do you like living here? I've made it yours." I didn't move. I didn't speak. The reflection in the TV showed the apartment empty, but I felt it behind me, smiling, waiting. I don't know how long this will last. Weeks, months, maybe years. Every reflective surface shows it. Every small anomaly whispers its presence. I live in the apartment now, but so does it. Always. Watching, smiling, waiting. Sometimes I wonder if it's always been here. Beneath the floors, inside the walls, in the polished surfaces. Learning, observing. And now, it waits for me to make the smallest mistake. To move, to blink, to breathe. If you ever move into a new apartment and feel watched, take it seriously. Listen to the subtle noises. Watch the reflections. And remember, some presences aren't meant to be seen. They just wait, and they never leave. Some people ignore the signs until it's too late. Open the horror box if you want more. The man who lives in my Wi-Fi. I first noticed the Wi-Fi acting strangely last week. Websites glitched mid-load, videos froze, and files I knew I saved vanished without explanation. At first, I blamed the router, my laptop, or maybe a glitch in the system. But then I saw him. A figure on my laptop screen, sitting in my apartment, smiling faintly. The lights behind him flickered in perfect sync with my desk lamp. I live alone. Nobody else has a key. I froze, staring. The figure didn't move, didn't blink. Just sat, smiling, watching. I tried closing the laptop, unplugging it, pulling the battery. Nothing worked. When I reopened the device, he was still there, closer, grinning. I checked my phone. The camera app opened itself. Flash turned on. I could see him standing behind my desk chair in the reflection of the screen. I spun around. Nothing. The apartment was empty. Only the silence of my own breath. Files started disappearing. Documents, photos, text drafts. Apps I had never installed opened on their own. Cursor moved. Keystrokes typed out nonsense. Sometimes messages appeared addressed to me. I'm here, watching. Don't look away. I tried resetting the router. Nothing changed. I disconnected every device. No luck. When I turned the Wi-Fi back on, all my devices flickered simultaneously, and he appeared in each screen. Always smiling, always closer, always knowing. I moved cameras to every room. Hidden, visible, connected to my phone. I checked the footage. Nothing. No person. No shadow. But every time I glanced at a live feed, he was on the screen, seated calmly in the corner of my apartment. At night, my devices acted on their own. Lights turned on and off. Smart plugs activated randomly. The TV changed channels. Even my microwave beeped at 3:13 a.m. Each action felt deliberate, as though someone was learning my habits. I started hearing soft typing. Not on my devices, but somewhere near my desk. Quiet, precise. Each tap echoed in my skull. I sat, paralyzed, staring at the keyboard. Nothing was there. Yet the sound continued. Messages appeared on my computer desktop. Tiny notes, cryptic, don't sleep, don't look away. You can't hide. The handwriting changed each time. Sometimes jagged, sometimes neat, sometimes cursive. But each note made my blood run cold. I tried sleeping elsewhere. My apartment felt empty, quiet, until I turned on my phone, checking messages. The Wi-Fi reconnected itself. Apps opened. The camera app launched. And there he was, sitting in my living room, smiling faintly, reflected on the screen. I unplugged everything. Laptops, phones, smart plugs. I left the apartment, went to a friend's house. But I swore I could still see him in reflections of windows, store displays, car mirrors. A shadow mimicking me, waiting, smiling. Returning home was worse. My devices turned themselves back on. The lights flickered in perfect sync with my heartbeat. Even with everything unplugged, I could feel his gaze, like pressure on my shoulders, weight on my chest, invisible but real. One night, I watched my laptop while standing in the kitchen. He leaned forward, closer, fingers reaching toward the camera. The image shimmered, glitched, then he was gone. I backed away. The Wi-Fi was off. My heart still raced. I called tech support, explained everything. They laughed nervously, suggested malware or hacking. I asked them if anyone could sit in my apartment through my network. They said impossible. I knew better. I had seen him. I had felt him. Files kept vanishing, sometimes reappearing. But now they were altered. Personal photos with subtle shadows I hadn't noticed. Texts in my documents changed. Words rearranged to spell my name repeatedly. It was learning, studying, invading. I installed motion sensors, hidden cameras, smart lights. I thought I could catch him. Nothing appeared on live feed. Yet each morning, small changes had occurred. A chair slightly moved, a pen tilted, my coffee mug filled differently. The notes increased in length. Now full sentences. I'm not in your devices. I am in you. Watching, learning, waiting. You can't escape. Every screen, every reflection, every thought I know it all. My hands shook as I read them. I tried a complete tech blackout. Unplugged everything. No Wi-Fi, no power. I slept in a closet with a flashlight. Yet I felt him. In the dark, watching, smiling faintly, patiently, waiting, always waiting. Even when I left the apartment, it followed. Notifications appeared on my old devices in my car. Streetlights flickered in rhythm with my pulse. Shadows moved in the reflections of shop windows. He was everywhere, always closer, always smiling. I confronted him directly, stared into the laptop camera, shaking, whispering, "Leave me alone." The screen flickered. For a second, I saw him in full, tall, thin, hunched slightly, perfect teeth gleaming. Then gone, but I felt the smile on my skin. I don't sleep anymore. Lights stay on. Cameras run 24/7. I check devices obsessively. Any slight flicker, any glitch makes my stomach twist. He's learning, waiting, studying, mimicking, always smiling, always watching. Every device, every reflection, every corner of my apartment. I tried moving, packed bags, left keys for the landlord. But when I returned, lights flickered, laptop booted, Wi-Fi connected, and there he was, sitting calmly, smiling in the corner, just out of reach. Patient, waiting. I've stopped trying to fight it. I leave notes for it. Move furniture deliberately. Interact with my own devices as if it's a partner in conversation. But the smile never leaves. The watching never ends. It's inside my network and inside my mind. Sometimes I swear I see him in mirrors, outside, in reflections on the phone when it's off. He's always there. I can feel the pressure of his gaze in every corner, every shadow, every surface. Always watching, always waiting. I don't know how long I'll last. Hours, days, months. But one thing is certain. He is inside me, inside my devices, inside my apartment, inside my mind. I will never be alone. Not ever. If you ever see something in your device that shouldn't exist, don't blink. Don't look too long. Some things cross from the network to reality, and once they do, they never leave. Some people ignore the signs until it's too late. Open the horror box if you want more. The neighbor who watches through walls. The first night I heard it, I ignored the tapping. Soft, deliberate, like fingernails tracing the wall. I told myself it was pipes, the building settling, nothing more. But the sound repeated, always at 2:17 a.m. Then came the whisper. My name, quiet, hesitant, almost friendly. But I live alone. My neighbor's apartment is empty. Or so I thought. My pulse spiked. I froze, straining to hear, my breath shallow, ears alert. I pressed my ear against the wall. Silence. Only faint echoes of the city outside. I told myself I was imagining it. Exhaustion. Stress. But the next night, the tapping returned. Louder, more deliberate. A rhythm, waiting for me. Objects began moving. At first, minor things. A mug tipped slightly, a pen shifted, a notebook left open. Small enough I questioned my own memory, but patterns emerged. The shifts were too deliberate, too precise, too focused. One evening, I left the apartment, returned hours later. The door was slightly ajar, though I always lock it. Inside, furniture was subtly moved. A chair closer to the wall. My shoes neatly aligned, yet no signs of forced entry. I installed a camera facing the wall, hidden, inconspicuous, hoping to catch a prank, a building worker, anything. Footage revealed nothing. No person, no shadow. But each morning, small changes had occurred. Items shifted. Notes appeared. Someone or something had been there. The notes began next. Small, folded scraps of paper under the door. Jagged handwriting. Watching, always, I panicked. Who could leave these? Nobody had keys. Nobody entered. Yet the apartment felt violated, alive with observation. I started hearing subtle sounds. Breathing behind walls, floorboards creaking, faint scraping. At first, I dismissed them. Then came the whispers. My name, repeated softly, urgent, almost pleading. I shivered. The presence was aware of me, aware of my awareness. I tried confronting the wall, knocked back, whispered, "Who's there?" Nothing, but a response came anyway. The tapping grew, followed by faint, deliberate scratching. Someone or something knew I had asked the question. It answered in its own way. I drilled a tiny hole, just enough to peek. My heart raced. Through it, I saw movement. A figure hunched low, scribbling on a notepad. Every object, every action in my apartment was being recorded. The watcher existed within these walls. I tried leaving, spent nights at friends' places, but the sounds followed. Floorboards above, behind, through walls. Soft footsteps when no one should be home. Whispers echoing my name. Even shadows outside windows moved in rhythm with my heartbeat. I called the landlord, asked about previous tenants. All normal. Nobody reported disturbances. Neighbors denied hearing anything. They said it was an old building, creaks common. But I knew better. The tapping, the whispers, the figure, this was deliberate, intentional, watching. I started leaving objects by the wall. A chair, a mug, a notebook. Items to see if the presence interacted. Every morning, they were subtly shifted, slightly moved. Notes appeared, sometimes folded into shapes. Messages. I know everything. I see everything. Sleep became impossible. Every creak, every draft, every shadow set my heart racing. I began pacing at night, listening, waiting, trying to predict the next sound. But the presence was always one step ahead, always patient, always smiling. Reflections revealed it sometimes. In polished surfaces, glass, phone screens. A fleeting shadow, a slant of a shoulder, a grin just behind the glass. Always just out of reach, just outside perception. Watching, learning, waiting. I tried speaking aloud. I know you're there. Silence. Then soft scratching. A note slid under the door. Do not speak. Just watch. You are mine now. My stomach turned. I had been claimed. Not threatened, claimed. Controlled, observed. Technology became useless. Cameras, smart devices, lights, they all failed to record the presence. Yet I knew it was there. Its tools were my own apartment, my own perception. Every sound, every shadow, every object became an extension of its gaze. One night, I drilled another hole, larger this time. Peered through carefully. The figure was there again, hunched, scribbling. Occasionally, it would glance up, meeting my eye through the tiny hole, smiling, calm, methodical. It existed outside logic, outside reality. I began leaving subtle signs of my own. Objects shifted deliberately, notes of my own folded, hoping to communicate. But it only responded by escalating. Objects moved faster, sounds grew louder, whispers more urgent. It was learning my methods. Eventually, I stopped trying to hide. Lights on, doors open, everything in full view. Yet the tapping continued. The whispers persisted. Even my attempts to escape the apartment were futile. The watcher was patient, eternal, inside the very walls. I noticed it sometimes mimicking me. Footsteps, posture, gestures reflected faintly behind glass, in shadows. The apartment had become a mirror of my own life, distorted, controlled, manipulated by a presence that knew me better than I knew myself. Neighbors never hear anything. Cameras never capture it. Landlord never notices, but I feel it everywhere. Behind walls, in floorboards, in reflections, in subtle scratches, whispers, moving furniture. Always watching, always present, always patient. The final note appeared under the door yesterday. Some walls aren't walls, some neighbors aren't real, and some live closer than you think. I left it untouched, sat in silence, listening, feeling its gaze on every inch of me. I don't sleep, I don't leave, I don't call for help. The apartment is alive with it. Every surface, every corner, every sound is part of its observation. I am no longer alone. I am observed, catalogued, studied. Sometimes I feel it smile. I hear soft scribbling. Tapping continues. Footsteps echo through walls. I know it is patient, waiting, watching, recording, learning, and I am trapped in my own apartment, a prisoner to someone or something inside my walls. If you ever hear faint tapping, whispers behind walls, or see shadows where no one should exist, don't ignore it. Some neighbors don't knock. Some walls hide more than structure, and some live closer than you ever imagined. Some people ignore the signs until it's too late. Open the horror box if you want more. The package that knew my name. The horror box creaks open at 3 a.m., whispering about a package that shouldn't exist. It appeared on my doorstep one rainy evening, unmarked except for my name written in uneven, jagged letters. I didn't order anything. I hadn't expected a delivery. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe a neighbor trying to be clever. I left it there for a day, hoping someone would claim it. But when I returned, it had moved closer to my door, perfectly centered, as if it had been watching me. Curiosity overcame caution. I opened it carefully. Inside was a small mirror, cracked across one corner, reflecting the room differently than it should. Shadows stretched in impossible ways. I swore I saw someone standing behind me. No one was there. That night, my phone buzzed. A message appeared. Did you like the mirror? The number was unrecognizable. I tried blocking it, tried ignoring it, but the messages kept coming, each one personalized, describing thoughts I hadn't shared with anyone. Sleep became impossible. Every time I glanced at the mirror, I felt eyes staring from it. Sometimes my reflection didn't mimic me perfectly. It smiled faintly when I didn't, shifted when I was still, and whispered words I couldn't understand. I tried throwing the package away. The next morning, it sat on my doorstep again, untouched by rain, perfectly dry, still labeled with my name. I panicked, considering leaving town. But even packing my car, I saw a faint reflection of the mirror in the rearview window, just out of reach. The messages escalated. Each one described my actions minutes after they happened. Sometimes they predicted small accidents, like dropping a cup, spilling water. Sometimes they described dreams I hadn't told anyone about. The mirror seemed connected to it, a conduit for something alive. I decided to confront it. I left the mirror in the center of the room, unwrapped. I sat across from it, phone in hand, trembling. "Who are you?" I typed. The reply was instant. "We are the Watcher. We are patient. We know you." The reflection began to shift violently. Shadows poured out of the cracks, forming faces, hands, twisting figures that reached toward me. My apartment grew colder, smaller. It was as though the mirror expanded, filling the room with presence. I backed away, but my reflection didn't. It leaned forward, grinning unnaturally. The shadows whispered, echoing my own fears. The messages pinged constantly, describing every flinch, every heartbeat. The horror box's presence in my mind pulsed in sync with the mirror's energy. I tried destroying it. Hammer, fire, knife, nothing worked. Each attempt failed as if the mirror repaired itself instantly. And every time, the messages continued. We are patient. We wait. We see everything. My apartment became unlivable, the air thick with unseen pressure. Finally, I locked it in a storage room, hoping distance would sever the connection. The mirror remained perfectly still, yet every night, at 3 a.m., I felt it in my room, reflected in windows, screens, and puddles. The presence hadn't left. It had expanded beyond the package. I stopped checking messages. I stopped looking at reflections. But the whispers continued, layered in my thoughts. Sometimes I saw the faint outline of the mirror, behind furniture, in corners, in shadows. It was patient, Waiting for the moment, I broke the rules and looked again. Even now, months later, I hear the faint creak of the horror box in my mind at 3 a.m. Sometimes the mirror appears in dreams, sometimes behind closed doors. I warn anyone who sees an unmarked package at their door, do not open it. Some things are not meant to arrive. Some packages are alive, some watchers are patient, and some mirrors are more than glass. They are gateways. The horror box closes, but it waits for the next delivery.